Hello everybody, and welcome to the construction of Richmond Raceway, in my dining room. I'm talking this through, so if any of you want to know how I made this track when it comes out this weekend for NASMAR's Richmond race, you have your answers. So the first thing I did is I flipped over the two pieces of trifold board I used. I just bought them from like Walmart or something, I honestly can't remember at this point. And the reason I flipped them over is because I was going to create banking with cardboard, as you see me here, slicing through the cardboard with an X-Acto knife so I can pop up the corners. I measured everything out, 3 car widths, the 4 car widths. Finally, I flipped the boards over, and I glued down the inside of the boards to the paper that I put onto the table. This is to keep the middle from coming up when I bin the pieces of cardboard up for banking. So you can see here I'm putting heavy objects in the infield to keep the paper from rising, which I sort of figured out how to completely stop, but it did take me a while, as you'll see later. But now the banking is set up. I ended up cutting through half the board on the inside lane in order to make the inside bend easier, but the big thing holding it together is the glue at the bottom of the table for sure. I then did the outlines for the top of the track, and the next few minutes of this time lapse is just me painting this behemoth. This is a total of about 1.5 trifold boards long and a full trifold board wide. So it is a bigger racetrack than I'm used to making, and this is the first one I wanted to paint. So I mixed up some black and white paint with a splash of brown. If you've seen one of Miss Craft's videos is where I got that from, to like make the pavement look like it's worn a little bit more. And then I started painting the track. I put down some painter's tape first so I didn't get any paint accidentally on the inside where I didn't want it. And then I painted the apron, the banking, so the racing surface, and pit road with this gray that I created. I accidentally ended up using too much gray. I ended up making too much paint, and I actually have some saved in a bottle for future racetracks, I guess. Not that I'll ever use it. So I'm ripping up all the painter's tape here. I had to go do some white touch-ups to some of the board where it peeled a little bit because I didn't use a great type of painter's tape. I should have maybe put some more thought into that, but it ended up working out fine. I used the smaller brush to touch up some of the details that I wasn't quite happy with. Ended up having to go back and paint over that space because Richmond has that area between the pit lane and the grass where there's a little bit of pavement between the pit lane wall and the grass. Now I took out the cars and pushed them all the way around I guess that's a little bit. First thing I did is I went ahead and painted the apron on the front stretch. I didn't paint this. I used Sharpie. I cheaped out a little bit because it was easier to use Sharpie. That's why I did it. And then I did the most excruciating part of this project that, I'll be honest, takes a lot more of the time lapse than it probably should have, but whatever. It's me painting this stupid yellow line all the way around the racetrack. I started to get really small and careful with my movements, especially at this point, because I wanted it to look as good as possible. I wanted it to look as smooth as possible. And I was trying to leave just about a car width of room on the apron, a little bit wider towards pit entrance and exit, then actually getting towards where this Geico restart zone spot was. Had to be a little bit more articulate. And then now I'm filling in the Geico restart zone just with blue Sharpie. It's because, again, I'm lazy. I don't want to paint everything because that would be a pain. And I feel like it'd be a little bit wasteful considering how many Sharpies I just have laying around. Then I went up and touched the track up with some details, the pit entrance and exit, and it's not shown on time-lapse because I was dumb and forgot to set up my time-lapse when I did this, but I also did some detailing the white lines that you see entering turn 3. I painted as well as the dotted lines guiding you into pit lane. That'll pop up eventually. I just was dumb and forgot to time-lapse that, so I'm covering it now. Right here, I'm just adding the little bit of black you see between the racing surface and the pit wall when you're entering pit lane at Richmond. And then I filled in the grass, again with Sharpie, because I have too many Sharpies not to use them. It's wasteful otherwise. This entire project, by the way, was created with just cardboard, paint, Sharpies, way more hot glue than I care to admit, and some cork from a cork board in order to keep the banking up. But you can realistically use anything that's about equidistant height if you wanted to create banking in a similar style. Now I'm going around and putting seams into the racetrack as well as painted the dotted white lines in the corners. I thought the seams would give a good indication of lane discretion, as well as making the gray track look a little bit more gray, like it's been aged a little bit more. as well as just being accurate to the real thing with the seams in the track. There you can see the white line entering turn 3, the dotted white line on the back straightaway. Like I said before, pit road painted also was off of the time lapse because, again, I'm dumb and I forgot. And then I had to go through and use that white line painted in between the cars to get the pit boxes. Do not recommend this. That is probably a great way to mess up a good diecast. But luckily, I was spared. Then I put weights down in the center because I noticed the banking still wasn't quite as banked as I wanted it to be. It was kind of running all the way to the very center trifold board. So I put the weights down the middle to kind of hold the middle down more. Same thing the glue was doing. The glue just wasn't doing great because it was on paper, not the table. So now the banking is a little bit more noticeable. And then I completed the garages and all of the walls. So I took a temporary break here, set up all the cars, and then I got into the real impressive stuff of this racetrack, the grandstands. I took some pieces of cardboard, cut them out all in the same shape, same thing with their supports, and I just used an unreal amount of hot glue. I mean, more hot glue than you could ever possibly want. I also used some catch fencing. I found some wire fencing at Michael's. I guess that's the only other material I ended up using in this to make it, other than, I guess, paper, as you'll see in a bit. But I ended up finishing gluing all the grandstand bases. This is just the base for the grandstands, because obviously there are no fans. So what did I do for that? I created a Google Drawings board of just a whole bunch of dots. I also made the suites here with more cardboard and such. I found some white cardboard from some of the trifold board I didn't use. And then I printed out a ton of pieces of paper with dots that I put on just in Google Art, and there we go. The track now, as you can see, is done. I ended up adding the start-finish line, just a piece of paper that I printed out, and now you can see the full glory of Richmond Raceway. This track ended up taking me about a week to make. I ended up doing all the sponsorships just with paper and gluing them onto the walls, and it ended up looking fantastic. Put a lot of time into this, I put a lot of thought into this, and I'm so excited to host a stop motion at this beautiful track that is coming out this weekend. It is the NASMAR race, I guess summer, not fall. The summer Richmond race for the NASMAR Community Cup Series is coming to the NLS channel. It's going to be an amazing race, 40 cars, 20 laps, 3 stages, and I cannot wait to get this out to you guys. Thank you so much for watching this time lapse of one of the best tracks I've ever made, and I hope you all have a good night.